Tommy, I appreciate you coming out today, and you can correct me if you think I'm misstating anything that happened in the session, but I'll just start by saying that this year was proof that elections matter, and that last fall we got a 20-20 split in the Senate. That gave the Lieutenant Governor the opportunity to break the ties on everything except the budget and the election of judges. And so the Democrats, even before the session started, said that they were going to interrupt those things. They were not going to vote for a budget, and they weren't going to vote for judges, which is the most irresponsible thing they could have said and done. On the judges, if the General Assembly does not elect judges, the governor appoints them. And I'm not sure that Senator McEachin and Senator Marsh would be very excited about him appointing the judges in Richmond, Senator Miller and Norfolk. And so that was kind of an irresponsible direction to take it. And then the budget, we have to have a budget. And they had no end game. Senator McEachin was the driving force in not stopping or convincing his caucus that they could put up a fight for the budget. So what began is they made that commitment, then they worked with us as we developed it. We came up with what we felt like was a good budget. They felt like it was a good budget, but in subcommittees, and then they weren't along to vote against it. It was purely political. But the end result was that at the very end, after all the discussion about what the priorities of the state should be, they decided that they were going to say that the metro going to Dulles deserved $300 million. The only problem with that was that that was a package agreement that was made under Governor King. It was controlled, the whole process was controlled out of Virginia, with 1/3 of the support of the voting members being from Washington, D.C., 1/3 of the members being from Maryland. In the first part of that, they spent over $100 million net. Well, I'm not saying how much, but a lot of extra money because they required it to be a union job. Not the lowest bidder, but what was going to be. The only bidders that could bid would be people that would agree to pay union wages. And so that blew the cost way out of line. But still, the rates of those budget of the riders was going to be the same. Never changed. But they saw an opportunity to embarrass the governor, and at the same, so they threw in this $300 million request. There's no way to spend that money, and if Senator Golden had not agreed to back off that position, we would not have a budget. They considered that more important than whether the counties could do their budgets for law enforcement, for education, for all the things that we have to do. And why would they make that stand? Well, if you rewind back to last October, the unions flew in between October and November over $1 million. That they effectively indicated that they did give them money. So that was what, no matter what you see in the paper, the end result was, the reason they got to that point was that they wanted to embarrass the governor. At the same time, they wanted to try to pretend like they were going to pay back unions for the support. So again, I'll say that elections do matter. We see that in Washington. We elected a president that we didn't know. We knew nothing about him. We didn't know what even though we knew everything about George Bush, his grades in college, whether he drank too much, all those important issues. But we didn't bother to find out anything about Senator Obama. He was an unknown entity for the most part. Fox News and some folks tried to tell folks that he may have some flaws, but the general public was determined that that they were going to ignore his past. They wanted to change in Washington. And so where we got is what we got. And we have to change that. 2 years ago, we were able to change Congress because people got out and were passionate and concerned. We cannot say that it happened 2 years ago, so we're going to make it happen today or this year. We've got to say we're going to do everything we can do at the parliament. If we can elect one more senator from Virginia, hopefully that will not be 51st, but he keeps going around saying it's going to be the 51st. But actually, we hope it'll be one of the 53 or 54 or whatever, multiple. George Allen is a known quantity. We all know him. We all like him. I like to call him governor, but Jim asked whether they call him governor or senator, or he said call him George. Most of the time I do, but I would rather call him governor because I worked with him when he was governor, and I saw his ability to get people to do the right thing. At the time, the General Assembly was controlled by the Democrats in both the House and the Senate, and he pushed through welfare reform. He pushed through 3 strikes and you're out. Felons, thank you. And so many other things that he was willing to go out on a limb and make happen. And his ability, his force, his character was so extremely important in accomplishing that. I think it ran well. The folks at the General Assembly just couldn't select him. So, George, thank you for putting yourself up again. We look forward to seeing you and back in Washington.
Thank you. Well, good. Well, thank you all for being here. Frank, thank you for that kind introduction. And I know it's a morning and you're all here. And the reason I'm here, I'm going to share some views with you. But mostly I want to hear from you. One of the reasons I've gotten off the sidelines and into the fight is that this is a really tough job market for young people, younger than all of y'all. But you look at the future like Susan and I do through the eyes of our children. And young people right now coming out of college, a lot of them are moving back home because they can't find work. And the job market's the worst for young people since World War II. And a lot of them have a lot of student debt, and they're also getting loaded with a lot of debt from the federal government as well. And that's one of the reasons when you said thanks for getting in the fight, Frank. One of the key reasons is because of the future. This election, this November, 6 months from now, and I need your vote in June as well. But this election in November, I think is going to determine the trajectory of our country. And I envision a much better future than what we're having to endure in these days. So many things that go wrong in a government that is seemingly out of touch with the voices and values and just the common sense of folks in the real world. Frank was talking about what they went through in the General Assembly, and Tommy, you went through it as well. Frank, in the Senate was a little bit tougher than the numbers you have in the House of Delegates, but I even said this on the radio. What is it? The Rewind 101.2, we both rewinders. And I said, I don't trust Tommy Wright and Frank Rupp to be making decisions for Virginia way more than I would trust Harry Reid and those folks in Washington. And there are several issues that I think are big flashpoint issues, but also indications of the differences between us, the Allen campaign, and that of Tim Kaine. And they have to do with taxes, they have to do with energy, they have to do with regulations and the size and scope of the federal government. Right now, our federal government is imposing the highest taxes in the world on job-creating businesses. I know most of y'all are small businesses. Small businesses are the ones who create at least 2/3 of the jobs. They're the businesses that are here in Clarksville, Mecklenburg County, and throughout southern Virginia. And having a high tax on small businesses, medium or large-sized businesses, does not help us become more competitive. To have the worst tax in the world. So I think we ought to have a much more simple, fair, and competitive tax policy and system in our country. And if I think we ought to be better than the international average of 25%. We're right now the federal government imposes a 35% tax. If that were reduced to 20%, these are independent analysis, over 500,000 new jobs would be created every year. That's 5 million jobs over a 10-year period. Now, Frank mentioned, people say, all right, well, some people have a higher amount, some have a lower amount. Frank brought up when I was governor, and we had a Democrat majority. We ran on an audacious agenda where we actually worked together. It wasn't easy, but we worked together and we abolished the lenient dishonest parole system, instituted truth in sentencing, welfare reform, high academic standards, and accountability in schools, froze college tuition, cut taxes by over $600 million, put money in the rainy day fund, and over 300,000 net new jobs were created in those 4 years. And we sent a message to the world that Virginia is open for business. I think our mission now needs to be send a message to the world that America is open for business again. And I really do think there are the building blocks to get a more simple, fair, and competitive tax policy. Some have higher amounts, some have lower, but I really think it can be done. Because if nothing is done, taxes are going up on everyone. Debt taxes are coming back full throttle, and taxes on families, businesses, everyone's going to be going up. So to me, there seems to be a foundational opportunity, a fundamental opportunity to get a working deal together. On energy, this is an issue that affects everyone. These high gasoline prices are affecting everyone, particularly people who live in rural areas and in the suburbs, and folks drive longer distances to and from work. Yeah, the prices have dropped a little, which is better than where they were. However, you have to take it into consideration that in January of 2009, the average price of a gallon of gasoline was $1.85, and now the average is, whatever you're going to pay for it, about $3.70 something. Tucker, what do you pay for it today?
$3.79.
There you go, $3.79. All right.
Yes.
Now, if you have to figure what is this? What is the impact of this? And so for a fill up, and we have too much at the pump.com, where you can calculate in your actual vehicle, because every vehicle doesn't have the same type of size gas tank. People are paying $30, $40 more every single time they fill up. And you ask folks, what would you do with that extra $40 or $30? And many might have come here to this restaurant or other restaurants, or saved it for their kids' college education, or pay off bills, or a variety of things. And they're not able to do it. This is really straining family household budgets. There's one woman, I was in the Valley, and I even mentioned this at the shed blanking speech, because it just really hit me. I had my iPad out and doing a calculation for us. She had a Legacy, Subaru Legacy, and I saw she only got $20 worth of gasoline. And then that only, $20 got her 5.1 gallons. That's how awful it is. $20 usually would pretty much fill up your tank or get you there, but that's enough for a 5-gallon gas tank for your lawn tractor. And at any rate, I said, why did you get $20 for it? Well, that's all I can afford. I asked her, well, it would cost you $31 to make the calculation if she could afford to fill it up. And she had 2 of her children with her at the car. And I said, what would you do with that extra money? Well, it would help pay for dinner for my family. That's the reality of what's happening. Now, it doesn't have to be that way on this issue as well. We are blessed with the most energy resources of any country in the world. We have a government in Washington led by these Washington liberals who seem to like to keep, well, they do keep it off limits. They don't want to get gasoline or oil from a good, reliable neighbor and ally, Canada, this Keystone Pipeline. Tim Kaine and President Obama are against the Keystone Pipeline. It's absurd. They say it needs more study. It's more study. It's been studied for 3 years now. There are thousands of miles of oil and gas pipelines all over this country. What they really don't like is a method by which the oil is extracted from the tar sands, which is more energy intensive than regular crude oil production. But the point is that they're not going to stop it. These radical environmentalists are not going to stop Canada from doing it, because China told them, look, if Americans don't want it, send it over to Vancouver. We'll take every drop of it. Another point of what we can do is right here in Virginia. The White House keeps saying no to Virginia. If I'm hired on to serve you all, and the people of Virginia, the U.S. Senate, there's 4 bills I'm introducing on day 1. One of them is to allow Virginia to produce oil and natural gas off our coast, and then use those royalties for roads and transportation. There's no reason why we in Virginia, Frank and Tommy and Frank for many years, has been a key leader in this effort. There's no reason why Virginia should continue to be denied our ability for jobs and obviously energy resources. But I think it's really important for our national security as well. The other attack on energy is that Tim Kaine and President Obama for what is called this cap and trade energy tax scheme, which would cause skyrocketing electricity costs. Well, as people figured out what that is, they don't want to vote on it now in the Senate. So how are they doing it? The way they're doing a lot of stuff is by these unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. In this case, once again, it's EPA. And if that regulation, which I blasted, it's so wrong, if that goes into effect, it's going to, in effect, outlaw coal for generating electricity. The result in a few years would be that we'll feel the same pain paying our monthly electricity bill as we're feeling every time we go up to the gasoline pump. And so EPA needs to be stopped. Finally, on regulations, and you all go ahead and eat your breakfast. Don't maybe call omelets. I would only discourage you from on regulations, I think we need to rein in these unelected bureaucrats. If any regulation has an impact of over $100 million, I think members of Congress ought to vote on it. This is a representative democracy. I think the laws that Congress passes ought to apply to them as well. One of the prime examples of this is this Obamacare, which Tim Kaine says is, quote, a great achievement. I want to be the deciding vote to repeal Obamacare and then replace it with more personal, affordable health savings accounts. I remember Tucker as a Runts Country Store in Halifax County. A couple of years ago. Whatever, it was actually 2009, so it's 3 years ago. There's all these guys that sit around the table there at Runts Store in Halifax County, and I said, what's your #1 concern? Every one of them was this Obamacare and worry about access to physicians. Tim Kaine and Frank brought up the unions, the payoffs. The AFL-CIO, thank you, Ms. Lauren, mentioned the unions. The AFL-CIO has endorsed Tim Kaine. And one of the reasons I said that they endorsed him is because he's for this new government health care law. And I was thinking, isn't that interesting? These unions were exempted from it. They got a waiver from it. There's thousands of companies that have gotten waivers from it. If it is so great, if Obamacare is so great, how come there aren't folks lined up around the clock to sign up for it? And more importantly, back to what I'm saying, if it's so great, this ought to apply to members of Congress as well. Why should they impose that on all the rest of us and then have them exempted? So that's going to be a big issue in this campaign as well. And, so with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull my chair around here and sit down, or unless we can move, so because you all are not owls and cannot turn your necks around that way. So I'm actually just going to sit at this end here if it doesn't give you too much indigestion. And then I'd like to hear your ideas, get comments from you, and your insights of what we can do to make sure our government, your government, is more responsive to the needs of go ahead. Small businesses. So thank you all so much. Let me just sit down here. I'm going to take this. No, I'm not going to be able to eat. My food is this cup of coffee. Susan already says I talk in my mouth too much.
Oh, please don't do that.
You can.
I'll come around.
You got my back.
Yeah.
You got my back.
Push me down a little bit.
Well, I want the pit dog is the first to holler sometime. I want to tell you. I'm in the agricultural sector. And I deal with the U.S. Department of Labor constantly. And EPA regulations are choking us to death. And with the labor department, for the unions, let's do it, bringing in legal foreign labor. But the bureaucrats, as you mentioned, are seemingly trying to make the laws, and I constantly tell them that regulation is not a law. It amounts to the interpretation of some bureaucrat out there that implements their policies on us in the agriculture sector, along with the fuel cost is putting small business and medical.
We both have my own tobacco tie on here. Obviously, these fuel costs are affecting farmers, and it affects the price of food. I guarantee you it's affecting this restaurant here, that everyone I've talked to, they end up having to pay fuel surcharges on deliveries to these restaurants. And that either gets passed on to consumers or they have even less profit. Restaurants well, there's a lot of them closing doors because of these higher costs. And with the higher costs, they have fewer customers. Well, Susan was actually in Stafford, and the woman has a cupcake business. She makes cupcakes, and she says she goes by these filling stations to see what the price is, and if the prices are up, she makes 4 cupcakes. She's got it figured out that cupcake sales, it's like these folks at Shoney's they have in Southwest Virginia, there's 8 of them owned by employee stock ownership, and they say as soon as gas prices go over $3.39 a gallon, that's what we're going to see. Drop off. So it's bound to happen. Once it gets off this, I think some other things on these regulations. So let me go to someone else. Yes, sir.
Jimmy, I talked about a year, Veterans Enterprise Technology Solutions has been very successful, been in business for 6 years and going to be 0 to 500 employees. As we've grown.
How many do you have? 500?
500. Not just here, we have that 20 years. But throughout the country. What's frustrating is as you grow, you get penalized with more regulation. You get up to 50 employees, and you have all these reports you have to do to the Department of Labor. Equal employment, equal opportunity, on and on and on. It gets a little tough to just maintain that. It's almost like a couple of full-time employees just to maintain the record system for that. Now they're I assume it's fact, I've been told by my advisors that the DOL now has regulations in effect this summer that will make it even worse on this. Basically, they'll look at, we have to do the reports, and they'll look at what we pay people, and if we're like within 5% quality, like the vice president, or engineer, then we'll end up getting fined for that. And that's like, we're a different contractor. We can't be competitive in one gun. And 2, some people are worked for, because they have more experience, higher education, but that doesn't take into effect with the regulations of the DOL. Hasn't been public much, but that's what I'm told, that that's first this summer.
They're going to determine what you want to be paid.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If we don't.
Do you know what this is called? This first I've heard.
I can find out. Again, I've been told it by my HR guy. We talked with this all goes into process.
You all, I assume, are not unionized.
Not yet.
Well, that's another one that's coming up, is that the coast to make it, of course, it's going to see enforcement, of course, it's still an issue of posting how it makes it easier to unionize, and also there's going to be a vote on stopping them from having snap unionization.
We don't have a union per se, but we can still apply that. We've been successful in fighting that off with advertising the pros and cons and all the stuff that you can't defend yourself. You know, basically.
Right.
So we've been doing that. But as there's new regulations, like agriculture, the new regulation, DOL secretary is proposing that will make it hard to have family farms, because they don't want the kids to work on the farms. If you're under 18, you won't be able to work. I mean, that's just the foundation of
Yeah,
America's
I heard that from a dairy farmer in the Shenandoah Valley as well.
It's just, I mean, she, the Secretary of Labor, is pushing this,
back on the regulation aspects, as I said, I think that there's a regulation. First of all, there ought to be an economic impact analysis, not just looking at what the impact of the regulation is on flora and fauna and isoplods, but what's the impact on people and their property and their jobs. And members of Congress ought to vote on these things. This is a representative democracy, and this administration has been increasingly passing major regulations to unelected bureaucracies. And there's a measure, it's called the REINS Act, and I'm very much in favor of that. The rising medical costs, insofar as the liability laws and so forth, Virginia actually has good laws relative to other states. County deserve credit for it, and some other states do not. And I actually talked to a doctor who was talking to his wife, actually said, well, he could have been anywhere in the country. He actually looked at what the medical liability laws or insurance laws were in various states. And he ended up in Virginia because they had good laws compared to other states where the insurance or medical liability insurance policies are so high. Because of all people that leave medical school at high, student loans are medical doctors, and very few of them, or fewer and fewer, are actually going out and practicing on their own. They're going to hospital or somebody else handles them. I'm for health savings accounts, which allows individuals to own and take it from job to job. And you have a high deductible, the costs are less, you have more personal responsibility for it than the way it is right now. Now, since you're off your phone here, on the regulations on farmers, which Jim brought up too, I'm going to be in Pennsylvania later today and talk to a farmer who actually got a permit, the first permit in effect of over $30,000 to get a permit for a farm. He's got about 1,000 cows for a dairy herd, and he wanted to have the pond for irrigating his corn, feeding dairy cows. And it took him over $30,000 to get this permit. It goes to the state entitles fund, Army Corps of Engineers, which in this case the office are on, which I said, that's good to know, because they can do it. Then the EPA, and Gretchen Blair is the one who got it all approved for him. And that is the first one in over 2 years in this Clean Water Act aspects. We're not putting up, yet for a farm pond, and I said, listen, I've been talking to farmers, I'm surprised anybody has got any of them, because they're stopping these farm ponds. And I said, well, that's the first. So that's an issue. The other thing on what they're doing on tobacco in particular is that this administration still hasn't, for the U.S. trade representative, when it look on trade, we want to open up markets. Usually when you're talking about opening markets and trade agreements, the ones who benefit the most from it are usually American farmers and opening up markets for American products. When I was governor, we'd go on trade missions all over the world, Asia, Egypt, Europe, Canada, Mexico. And I always liked promoting Virginia products, whether it was Virginia peanuts, tobacco, apples, chicken feet, poultry. Obviously selling chicken feet into Hong Kong. We don't eat many chicken feet here, but yes, I made everyone have plates. They brought in these big plates. I said, look, we're going to show how much we love chicken feet. Oh my goodness, no one wanted to be with me at meals. Somebody was choking on them, others were sick at the side, and so forth. But we sold more chicken. You've got to promote. At any rate, there's this free trade agreement, the Trans-Pacific Free Trade Agreement that's now under negotiation. And this is what, obviously, the Pacific. And our U.S. trade representative ought to be promoting American products. They are actually considering not promoting American tobacco. Now, our tobacco, American tobacco, is the best tobacco in the world. It does cost more, but it's the best quality. And if they do not put American tobacco as part of this, it means they'll be paying these 15% tariffs on American grown tobacco. That just simply will make it completely non-competitive. And I think that it's just ridiculous for them to consider that. And if they do, if so much of our tobacco now, as with our lumber, particularly our hardwood, is being exported. And so that affects tobacco farmers here in South Side Virginia, and the American tobacco growers all over the country. So that's just absolutely wrong for them. If they do it, I'm trying to put pressure on them, embarrassing them for doing the right thing. And that matters a lot. Granted, there's not as many tobacco growers as there was before. However, it's still I'm going to go to JTI down. You still growing tobacco?
Oh.
And we tell this out with liquor store.
Huh.
Two questions.
Yeah.
One, thanks to Frank Ruff and Tommy Wright, place to go on later today, Microsoft, is in this county. Governor Kane was of dismal or no help whatsoever in making that happen. When you were governor, many companies came with high-tech businesses to Virginia. Why has he not wanted these, I mean, he little Apple devices, the Apple Center that went to North Carolina, he just, he didn't do his own thing with Virginia.
He's on that cane.
Yep.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting from Governor McDonald, they had an event. They had all the 9 living governors, and we were all supposed to talk about what we did. You have to pick one area that's a legacy, and Lyle's had transportation. While we talked about efficiency, I talked about economic development, and as Bob McDonald spoke last, Governor McDonald, he said it was easy being Attorney General with Tim King because he was out of state for all the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. It was a line. I thought it was the line of the event. I'm sure Tim King didn't consider it the line of the event. I was more subtle in commending Doug Wilder's leadership in tough economic times without raising taxes or trying to raise taxes, which is a contrast to Tim King. Economic development was the #1 claim on my time. As governor, you got 4 years, and those are 4 short years. And you've got to go to full gallop right after the election, so that when you're inaugurated, you're going. And we made that a priority, and I made it a priority. And Susan was a big help too, especially tourism promotion. Every governor's got different priorities. The whole thing with Tim King, and it was a question in our debate that I asked him, I said, "Look, you get 4 years as governor, and you really have a lot of ability to help and improve the lives of Virginians. Why would you take that job, the most partisan job in America, chairman of the Democratic National Committee, handpicked by the president, he's handpicked to be the senator of Virginians deserve their own senator, a senator, the president Obama to be the senator of Virginia." And I asked him, why would you do something? Because it really does take a lot of time away from your primary responsibility, which is governor of Virginia. So I don't know his answer wasn't kind of sharp. So I think Bob McDonald's showing, here's a governor who ran on mobs for jobs and making that a priority. There's been, just saw some of the workers been over several thousand jobs created. The economy in Virginia is doing better than the national average. And why? Because we have competitively lower taxes, not higher taxes, as Tim King did. Our energy costs, thanks to our electricity, is lower than the national average, although it's still high. We have right-to-work laws, which gives us a great competitive advantage. Being the furthest state north on the eastern seaboard really matters, and I know that it's got businesses in, whether in the Shenandoah Valley or Family Dollar in Halifax County. Being a right-to-work state, if you're not a right-to-work state, you're eliminating competition. Should be taken into consideration. And we do have a well-educated skilled workforce. It's thanks to our colleges and universities and community colleges. I'll tell you, one of the best community colleges, many of them in the South Side of Virginia Community College, just fantastic. And what they did, I remember with Family Dollar, they said, we can't get any truck drivers from Virginia. We have to get them from North Carolina, which naturally was upsetting to me. And Dr. Cavan followed what I asked, and we're using Fort Pickett for heavy equipment operators, and there's a tremendous demand, by the way, for heavy equipment operators, truck drivers, welders. Everyone talks about colleges, and colleges and universities are important, but there are companies that need welders, that need tool and die machinists, and these are trades, these are technical skills that really need about 2 years of training, and they're good paying jobs, really good paying jobs. So Kane was more worried about other things in Virginia.
Hospital care. When you were senator, you had a meeting in South Hill with all the rural hospitals. And as I understand it right now, both Halifax and Southside are looking at serious economic problems and having the birds themselves over the business. Both Halifax Regional Hospital and the one in South Hill are having serious considerations about selling themselves out. And at that time, you did a great conference, you know, rather than them come to DC to see you, you came to South Hill to see them. And were able to get.
I still have a police jacket from them.
You were able to get some things done in the Senate that kept them in business. And we're at a crisis point where we may lose both of those hospitals from local control.
You've already lost control.
And from which one?
South Hill. My babies are lucky. We got a cancer unit, which means you can come here to die.
And that is caused by what, in your estimation?
The reason.
You want to pull up here, Frank?
The reason for the eliminating the bourbon is that such a high percentage are Medicaid, and we can't afford to, they can't afford to operate. The dynamics are just not there, and they see no hope for the future from both of them. There are only, I think there are 4 independent hospitals left. These are 2 of them, and it's probably within the next year make a decision. It's not for
That's worrisome. You know, when in economic development and jobs, if you don't have access to quality health care, that really makes it hard to track business. So obviously, they're going to have reliable electricity, right to work laws, good workforce, lower taxes, proper funding, all of that. But that matters. Yeah, and the executives are going to want it as well. In Southwest Virginia, the fact that Carillion was expanding further into Southwest Virginia, not just staying in the Roanoke Valley area, was a big help. And that's a big help for here. The Medicaid issue, I'd actually like to have Medicaid run by the states. It's half state taxpayers, half federal taxpayers. What Obamacare is doing is rapidly increasing eligibility to Medicaid. This is welfare healthcare. Well beyond those who have poverty, it's fostering discrimination in government, but it's really eating into the state budgets, which means you can have less funding for higher ed, which means higher college tuition costs. Modeled on what we did with welfare reform, I prefer the states actually to manage it as laboratories of innovation. Now that Virginia and other states will do it right, some state might screw up. And then the government will say, look at this, people did in that state, we won't undo that in ours. But I think we get much greater efficiency. Maybe in a situation like Virginia, what you're having here is saying, look, the maternity issue, we're not paying it up, it's making it more difficult for people in rural areas to get maternity care or OBGYNs, which ends up with delayed activity and maybe some adverse outcomes because folks are having to go long distances. But then the state will react.
I think that's a fundamental problem. We are slowly, every year, losing more of our states' rights, which was one of the principles that our Constitution was based on. This country's great country was formed on. And slowly, the federal government is taking over education, taking over policing, taking over slowly. It's happening.
It's our freedom.
It's our freedom. And you mentioned natural right to work. Well, natural right to work. What's going to happen next?
My general, you know what my view is? I think this is, right to work laws are a matter of liberty. No working man or woman ought to be compelled to pay on average $700 a year in union dues as a condition of keeping or getting a job. We are in a minority of states that have right to work laws, but and then, by the way, that has to be defended. Frank was talking about paying off the union folks on the extension of Metro to Dulles. What they're trying to do is put in what are called project labor agreements. These are laws that discriminate against non-union workers and non-union contractors. 96% of the contractors in Virginia are not unionized. That means out-of-state unions come in and do this work. It adds to the cost. It's not competitive bidding. It is not competitive.
That's not the
bidding.
workers getting the benefit.
Well, and the workers aren't necessarily getting the benefits either, but the way that this deal at Extension Metro is that the costs are ultimately paid by the taxpayers and also toll road users. So people will be using that toll road and paying unnecessarily higher costs. You have another aspect of this whole thing called Davis-Bacon wages. And this current administration is forcing these Davis-Bacon wages. This is a Depression-era outdated law that adds about 22% to labor costs on projects. And any federal government project, whether it's a road project, housing, they have to pay these higher costs. Well, who pays for this? It means the taxpayers are not getting as much bang for the buck. Instead of 7 miles of road being resurfaced, you get 5 miles of road being resurfaced. Somebody builds a building that's a mixed use for rental, for offices, and so forth. It adds added cost to that. The tenants end up having to pay for it if it's a high finance building. So my view is we ought to have competitive bidding, and none of these project labor agreements whatsoever being required in the procurement. And I also don't think we need these Davis-Bacon wages, but that's not it. Tripled for the Shenandoah Valley contractors, had their wages tripled because they compared them to wages, I hate to get into details of Northern Virginia, but it's just ridiculous to be doing this.
I may interrupt, and we're coming to an end time. Yeah, right. Tommy would like to make a statement prior to us closing.
All right. I'd like to first thank you, Joel, for coming here today and taking time to talk to me. And I'd like to see you take the condition of value of Virginia to Washington, D.C. And we really, this country needs to be in a partnership. Look at Virginia, though. We've been named for several years the best state in the nation to do business. We've got a balanced budget. We've actually kept promises to our constituents by bringing government under control. You look at other states that are really out of control, and Virginia is doing its job. The reforming of the VRSA and any number of things, the right to work state. And you mentioned earlier about chicken people being sold in the store. Back when I was in the grocery business, we sold every part of the chicken, every part of the home that you can imagine. And that was the efficiency taken to a higher level, even our government to operate efficiently. And look at the federal government, we've got things like GSA, spending money like crazy. The president appoints unelected people that make regulations to strike into the economy, Obamacare. We cannot stand for 4 more years. And we need you in the U.S. Senate and look forward to you doing this. Things that are happening in the federal government today, despite the growth at the local level, and I appreciate the fact that you're making this effort. I know the praise is success.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your leadership. That's exactly why when you talk about the 10th Amendment, the Bill of Rights were to protect individuals and the rights and prerogatives of the states. That's actually what I want to make sure that judges understand. The Bill of Rights are to protect our freedom of religion, freedom of expression, private ownership of property, our natural right of self-defense, which is embodied in the Second Amendment, due process, equal protection. All of that, those are individual rights. And then the other protection of the Bill of Rights is the rights and prerogatives of the people of the states.
The final thing I want to mention.
So that's why being with these two, it makes it really easy to say, hey, do you trust these two or do you trust these folks in Washington? I trust you all.
When you see like in the newspaper today, Social Security is going broke how to control, you can't sustain the level of spending and our national debt.
Yeah, the lesson for that, yeah, all of those, look, there's a lot of, solutions on the table, on social security, as well as, I mentioned what I thought the solution was on the entitlement of Medicaid, and that is trust you all in the states to run it. And I think a lot of them are all worthy of consideration, also be on the table. The only one I would not be for, because we're talking about income averaging, age difference, so forth, a variety of calculations. All of that should be on the table except for tax increases. I don't think we'll be increasing taxes. The solution, though, the reason they say it's going broke sooner is because of the economy. The best social program of all is a job. If we have a stronger economy, more people will be working. More people will then be prospering, as opposed to getting unemployment benefits or welfare. So to me, the solution is to really reinvigorate the entrepreneurial spirit of this country and have this country truly open for business, for small businesses. You all that are veterans have a higher unemployment rate than the general population, about 12% coming back from Iraq and more from Afghanistan. Veteran-owned businesses are supposed to get 3% of these contracts. If we want to hire veterans, the best places to do it is use veteran-owned businesses and make sure they're using it. And I've talked to a lot of veteran-owned businesses, really good quality businesses, but they just get, the Veterans Administration is not enforcing their own laws and regulations.
They made it so hard, it's hard to use services.
Well, on top of it all.
The verification procedure now, you gotta protect our rights, because it didn't cost you, or you guys from the target.
Yeah, I understand. I have to get to a good new business, Microsoft Data Center. The Coastal Elite Technologies are the critical facilities operators of that. And I'm on the Elite Technologies Board of Directors, so Elite Technologies really loves doing it. That's awful. Don't some of the, if you will please not say, just say that I'm going there. But at any rate, it's.
Yeah, these guys are aware of what the Microsoft, they're not allowed, they know they're not allowed in that facility.
Thank you, Mr. Mosley.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'm gonna need y'all's help for June in the primary. Don't take anything for granted. It's our intra-squad scrimmage. Afterwards, we need everyone together. But make sure you vote. If you need bumper stickers, we got them. I used to say $250. Frank